Thanks for that quick turnaround today, Marty.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about all the confusion.
I hadn't yet gotten to that bit of the wasteland that is my Slack, so I'm glad to see that ignoring it paid off.
Glad to hear it. Afternoon. Reminder to sign in and add anything to the agenda that you want to talk about.
By the way, Stephen, in the invite for this meeting, it says that this meeting is happening on October 15th. I'm fairly sure that it is not that date.
I will fix that. That's supposed to be... Yeah, I was just noting that today is, or we merged them all together so it's easier for the one published link, like for community people to find, but then every other week is going to be sub-teams. So I just meant today is everybody. It wasn't supposed to be there, it was moved to the 15th. It's actually a good question. Did everybody get a calendar invite this week for the right time? I think we still had some people had canceled meetings or something.
Something weird is going on. I'm having trouble getting to the doc from the link that's in it, but don't wait for me.
Are there two different docs still, despite there being one meeting?
I think there's
Seems
only
like that,
oh,
given
gosh.
like the date of the previous meeting on this agenda.
Let me see. So this is the doc that, no, it's actually, it has the URL twice in it somehow. That's why it's not working. Here's the doc that I'm in right now. Is there another doc?
I think there are two docs.
I only have a link to that one.
So there's only one doc linked in this calendar event, but the previous meeting listed in this running notes is September the 29th, and we've had a meeting between then and now, and there were minutes.
Do you have that doc somewhere?
I can look for it. I won't hold.
You can see it actually in the thing on the left, in the title bar on the left. There is a 929. Agenda is in a couple of times, and there's a 929. Or you think there was another one since 929 as well? There shouldn't have been.
Today we'll use the doc in this meeting invite, and if somebody wants to find an alternate doc that has additional notes in it, I'll merge it into this one if you send it to me afterwards, if that sounds good. Sorry for the confusion. I'll go ahead and kick things off with the RFC review. If you give me 1 second to share my screen. Everybody see that? Cool. Builder subteam RFC is first. This looks like it's ready to go in. We have a special way of merging these, is that right? So we can't just hit the button in GitHub. It's gotta change the ID.
There's a script for it.
Cool.
This has also already been set up. A builder team exists that has all of the maintainers on it with the repos specified. So
We don't have an FCP process, so as soon as you see both approvals on there, it's probably good to assume that it's through.
What was the number on that? 23?
23. The PR number is, yeah, 23. Cool. It doesn't have a signed RFC number yet.
Done.
Awesome, thank you. And proposal to create Paketo project programming style guide. This is in draft. Frankie, did you want to chat about this week, or still working on it?
No, yeah, I'll take it out of draft when I'm ready to discuss it in this meeting.
Sounds good. I'll just skip over it then. Contributor guide and support materials.
I don't think there's much to add this week. Yeah, I don't think there's much to add from the last time we discussed. But I can go through it again if folks would like.
Are you looking? It's fine if you want to go over it again. Are you looking for approvals? Is it ready to review, or?
Not quite yet. I don't think. I think we wanted folks to look at it, yeah, but and comment if there were comments, but still kind of in flight.
If you want to chat about it this time, could you put it on the agenda doc at the end?
Sure.
Sounds good. At the beginning, we just try to go through everything and then follow back up with the agenda. Any other RFCs? Looks like these are all the top level. This is only searching through, are there language specific RFCs? We used to have a link to that search for everything tagged RFC. Tag RFC. No. So I think that's it then. So I'll stop sharing. And build plan, build pack has been moved into Paketo community.
yeah, so I was rereading the build plan, build pack proposal, and I realized like I should have moved this like 2 months ago. So I did it yesterday. It's in there now. It doesn't have a maintaining team yet. I think that I will probably, so I'm the sort of sole maintainer on it. I think I will forfeit the responsibility to another team to maintain it inside of Paketo community. There's a couple of updates that I would like to make to it to really solidify it, primarily around the name plan.toml, and I'd also like the Buildpack to stamp itself as the requirement source on all of its requires, so that you can, use that for whatever metadata purposes you would need, or we would need. I don't know that y'all would need anything for that in Java.
Yeah, it's a good idea to do it though.
Yeah.
More information is good information.
So those are a couple of changes that I want to make. But yeah, I think I'll forfeit that to a team right now. I see in the past that there was a discussion of like a Buildpack utilities, maybe not team, but sort of incorporating some of the stuff like image labels and proc file and sort of more generic utility build packs. Is that something that we would be interested in to the point where I could write up an RFC and potentially move some of that stuff over, or
we're not in any great rush to give those up. Like if we want to move them out so it's easier for people to reason about them and know, and we're not being responsive or something, like we're happy to have that discussion, but it's not onerous for us to continue managing those. And I would take the build plan, build pack as well, sort of under the umbrella that we're sort of watching all of the utility stuff at this time.
The
let's go ahead.
Discussion from the other week, I'm not sure we touched on Teams, was about sort of making a meta build pack, so it'd be easy to include it in all the language groups, and if like a new generic thing was added, it'd sort of get applied evenly across in a way that's predictable for end users. I don't think we talked about Teams per se. And I agree with Ben, if you don't mind doing it.
That's fine. I don't think that since like our build packs use it pretty extensively, I think that it makes sense for us to keep some handle on it in terms of how we're using it. So I think that maybe it'll go over to something like the tooling team. Use it a lot for testing internally and that sort of thing. So, but it's something worth revisiting, handing it off into more of sort of a generic structure like that.
Cool. Any other questions or anything on the build plan, build pack? Next thing on the list is .NET execute is finished.
Yeah, it's done. It got merged a couple of minutes ago. A release still needs to be cut, but that's the first build pack that has been rewritten using sort of for our re-architecture of .NET. Hopefully in a more seamless way than some of our other re-architectures. We're hoping to simplify what a lot of the architecture looks like and get rid of some of the really gross, hairy control logic that we have right now. So it's a first step.
Awesome. Any questions about that one? Next thing on the list is php.ini file in the php tarball.
Yeah, there was a conversation, or currently is an ongoing conversation in the PHP channel in Paketo Slack about including the php.ini file in the PHP tarball when we build the dependency. And there was a question as to why it wasn't included historically. It seemed like Dan just a minute ago gave you a little more context on that, but I was wondering if anyone has context on why we don't include it and if we should or should not, or opinions. Cool.
What's in it? Sorry, go ahead.
Is it configurable? I like a lot of those INI files. I know that we sometimes do like tweaks with them within the build pack itself. So like that's where you get like these weird, gross, really long constants. And we're like just tweaking what is and isn't inside the INI. Is that the case?
Right now in the build pack itself, we have like a hard-coded template, and we like you said, like we just plop in a few variables inside there. But it'd be great, like, you know, with the PHP source, with every distribution, they actually release the PHP INI for that version. So like the best implementation would be like the distribution itself came with this INI, and we would simply change the variables in the PHP dist build pack if we want to, like, depending on the case.
How would we do that then though? Like how do you then parse out the PHP INI file to make the changes?
It should be parsable. I mean, I haven't looked much into it, but it's an INI file, right?
What is the INI file? Is it like a config for PHP, or what is that file?
As far as I know, yeah, it's just the base configuration for like the PHP interpreter and like the utilities that come with it.
is it a file that's usually distributed with the PHP runtime that like kind of has default configuration in it and may change as new runtimes come out, and it's important for the build pack to be able to parse that and do things with it?
Yes, I believe so. It comes with the actual distribution. And if I'm not wrong, like when we're like packaging it up and putting it in our TarGC, it doesn't seem to be there. So in the build packs, we were creating one from like a generic template, and that's worked for us. But we don't know, like it seems like between versions there could be like changes that could possibly break it down the line.
I looked at the upstream source that came with like the source tarball, and it looks like it does come with like a php.ini -production and -development files. I mean, I assume we'd want to include the -production one, but
if I recall correctly, I do think that I don't know that they typically change. Sometimes they change within like a minor, but I know that like with minor bumps, often the ini file will change.
So it seems like maybe the safest workflow is to distribute the ini file with the runtime and then have the build pack use the ini file for the selected version of the runtime, make changes to that, and then use it to configure the application.
okay, that makes sense. We can add a story for that, I guess. Talk about what that looks like.
Yeah, you could chat with whoever's on the PHP subteam.
Yeah, definitely.
You got a good path forward. Cool. Any other questions about PHP? Go build plan conversion.
Yeah, I wanted this. If anyone has any other topics they'd like to bring up, I just wanted to have this one last because this gets a little bit into nitty gritty about how we want to do some conversions from Buildpack YAML to sort of any build plan. So if anyone wants to piece out, I figured I'd open the time for that.
Tim, did you want to kind of go over your community guidelines RFC?
No, I think it's okay. I think we hashed out a lot of the stuff that I was still wondering about last time. So.
Cool. So then, it seems like, is there anything else folks want to talk about before we jump on to Forrest's kind of deep dive?
One brief thing was I talked to Frankie about this last week, but the builder handoff, how's that going for you guys? Is there any other questions or anything you need help with around that? As of now, I noticed that there's been some activity in the Paketo repos with those new builder repos there.
I think we're good for now in terms of support from you all. One thing I did talk about with the Buildpacks team was perhaps having someone on core deps be a sub-team maintainer, just so that we're like sharing context across like stacks, lifecycle, and all the related build packs. Yeah, that's the only thing, but that's not super urgent, I guess.
Cool, that makes sense.
How did you want one of us to like volunteer to be a maintainer, reach out to you? Like, how do you want to decide that, or do you want to just assign someone?
I mean, I would prefer if someone volunteered. So if
Good.
that's something that you want to do, I guess let me know. Let me and Emily know as the other maintainers, and then we can figure out like what functionally that means in terms of a way that to like balance the work. I don't think it'll be that much.
Yeah, I can definitely do that if you need someone.
Cool.
Cool. Anything else before we do Forrest's build plan thing?
Y'all shouldn't feel guilty about just dropping off if you don't want to hear some nitty gritty about how we're going to do some conversion of Go. So feel free to leave if you want.
Bye-bye.
All right. I'm gonna expect that everyone else actually wants to hear what I have to say then. I wrote up I'm in the process of writing up a little proposal. We have some extra stuff that I obviously need to resolve, but this was my exploration in how I would get rid of Buildpack YAML for the Go language family. I broke this up by Buildpacks that have configurable options through Buildpack YAML. So Go dist has an option, and this is really easily converted directly into plan.toml because all I have to do is give the name require Go, and then I can pass any version that I want. Those are the only configurable options that we have for Go dist. So that was pretty straightforward. Then the only other build pack turned out to be a pretty big problem. So one of the, I'd say, I don't know, one of the disadvantages to using the build pack is that obviously your build pack has to make some sort of provision. So we would have to change the Go build pack to make a provision. We could do that in a very small way where Go build just says that it provides and it requires itself, and then we can move on with our lives and inject as much metadata as we want. I think that another thing that we could potentially do that has some interesting ideas is to write a Go execute build pack, which would pull in the Go build or binary or whatever we want to call this provision. And then it will be responsible for writing the start command and requiring Go build. Have like this whole sort of tangent about how we could potentially put source clear in between these two things, which means you could intercept right after your Go build and then just still have all your source code and whatever binary you built on the path as well. Which potentially means that you could move on with later builds, etc. That's clearly I'm not committed to that because I moved it all the way down here, but it's an option. And the only other problem that comes with using the sort of build plan is that getting configuration during detect isn't really possible through the build plan. So there are only 3 instances that I can think of, and that I looked through all of the build plan configuration where we need something at build time to check. So that is Go targets to detect whether or not we have like Go files in the Go targets if it's not at the root. The other 2 were .NET project path and PHP WebDir. Those are the 3 that I can think of in terms of something that a user can configure to point at where their source code lives. So I'm sort of going to go with the idea that we should just take a page right out of the Java build packs and use an environment variable to configure something like that. Currently we already have BP_Go_targets, which allows you to set your Go targets through an environment variable. I think that we should just go ahead and say that that's the only way that you can configure your Go targets, and everything else kind of plops into line after that. So assuming the resolution of this above, i.e. there is some provision from Go build, and we go ahead and say that we're okay with BP Go targets being the only way to configure where your Go targets are, the build pack, like the build plan would look like the following, bearing in mind that I'm more than willing to change what the provision is called or whatever, right? So it would be the name Go build, and then requires, we have flags, which will be a list of strings of build flags, and then import path, which will be, an import path. I don't really know what else to say about that. The only other piece that I would like to bring up is that I think that it would be smart for us for some period of time to both support Buildpack YAML as well as whatever it is, plan.toml, just the build plan Buildpack as it stands. I am not sure how to do that, whether it be we give 30 days, 60 days, something along those lines, or if we say we'll support it for X number of versions, or I'm unclear on that, but I'm flexible on any of that. And I just have a quick sort of discussion about how we would accomplish that by basically reading Buildpack YAML, converting it into something that goes into the requirements in the same metadata fashion as anything up here. So that's my spiel on how I think we could convert this over. Looking at other build packs, I think that there are going to be less issues with some of the other ones. PHP I'm a little concerned about, but I think that there's some hope for that. And I think that Node is basically ready to go. Like you could convert Node over, and like I could have done it last night if I was really compelled to. But yeah, yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now because I've hit the end of what I need to say.
Can you help me understand the motivation for supporting BP Go targets only as an environment variable, but then having the rest of the things use the build plan mechanism?
It's because BP Go targets indicates, so you can have a situation like, let me see if I can find one. I think an example will help more than me just telling you. So we support a build case like, there it is, this. So BP Go targets, in order to see that we need to go build, we obviously look for some splat.go in some file, right? Otherwise, we're kind of just extraneously passing detect. So the way that we do that is we look for BP Go targets. We look in each one of those for some x.go, right? Main.go, whatever. The reason that I can't put that into build plan is because that's not inspectable during detect, right? Anything that goes in the build plan is only inspectable by the build pack once it's in the build pack plan. Unless that's not true.
The environment variables are available during detect also.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, but like,
oh, but you can't receive the build plan entry during detect, and it's in the detect phase is where you're looking for those .go files to know whether it's around. If the users manually set that, I'm assuming you don't need BP Go target set normally, right? It'll like default to building the root or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So when you set that, if the user manually sets BP Go targets, it's a pretty strong indication that they're saying it's a Go app and you shouldn't move on to other build packs or try other build configurations anyways. Could you use that environment variable as a trigger to say, you know, like in the case they set that, could you just skip the detect phase and assume that it's a Go app and should detect as a Go app because they have that information available?
But I mean, like, why? What benefit do I get from that?
Oh, because it's the case where it's the build plan. It's in the build plan that you can't see it during detect and figure out if it should be set.
So I might as well just treat it like I always can. And we could even, like, once we've seen this in detect, we could put it into the build plan afterwards if we really wanted to. But it kind of seems like if we wanted to maybe process it in detect or something like that, we could do that. But it kind of seems extraneous.
Trying to think if there's a way around, kind of letting you specify it at build time too. We don't have a really consistent way of specifying environment variables across different platforms. There's like Project Toml isn't well supported and everything yet. I think it's just parsed in pack. And so if, it'd be nice if you didn't have to have a different kind of configuration for each platform, and have to go through that environment variable mechanism this time, or like, differently in each case. And so that's why I'm wondering if, like, it feels a little weird to me to split the configuration, if that makes sense.
I don't disagree, but like, yeah, I don't know.
I guess you'd worry that if you just completely ignored that information during detect, you'd worry that there wouldn't be a great place for you to look for Go files to see what thing you should build, because even if the module root said, it helped that the module root would have Go mod and Go sum in it in almost all cases.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess an alternative could be that BP Go targets targets goes into the requires metadata, but then what has to happen is we basically have to like make our detect more permissive, which feels like it might be not the way that we want to go. So like, let's say BP Go targets isn't set. Like, are we okay with us basically recursively searching the file system for .go files or go.sums, or it would have to be just .go files, because you don't necessarily need to have a go sum, go mod, right? Like,
and then you don't really know if it's a Go app or if you just found some Go files somewhere.
Yeah, which, I mean, like, it would be hard to say that you wouldn't want some form of build if you found a .go file, right? So maybe that's a somewhat safe assumption, but like, that gets a lot dicier when it comes to like .NET Core or even PHP, right? Like, I'm sure there's PHP files lying all over the place for lots of things.
We actually do this. I think I'm following along. My understanding of the details of Go is a little bit sketchy here, but we, like, for example, the JVM providing build packs always pass 100% of the time. They will just always pass. And we basically make them a required one and then a bunch of other optional stuff in the group. And we allow basically something else in the group to drive whether or not this is actually going to pass in that case. So you can like always contribute Go build, but like that's not enough to actually say that this group believes that this is a Go application. Something later on, right? Some other build pack later on also has to pass in conjunction with the runtime also always passing in order for this group to fire and say, hey, I am actually a Go application.
Sure, but like at the end of the day, I don't know what the check for that is, where like I either have to ask the user like, hey, if your Go app is not at the root of your workspace, you're going to have to give me this environment variable, or I have to just say, well, recursively, file path walk the entire workspace. If I find a .go file, then pass, right? Like,
yeah, I believe we do this in our build system stuff. Is we will walk, but short-circuiting walk, like looking for pom.xml or build.gradle to determine whether or not the build system build packs are actually going to pass in the first place. And then that's sort of the first pass. And then the second, as you come back around to build could still fail, right? Because you have then at that point, that is the point at which we would evaluate all the metadata that was handed to us and attempt to do the build itself. So it is possible for a build pack to pass, but that pass detect, but then fail a little bit later on during the build phase. And it's not ideal, right? Like you'd hope that you could figure it out earlier, but given how quick detect is, like it's basically a no op when you come back around and you do the real concrete test as part of build.
I think the problem is that if you specify the information in the build plan as a require, there's no way to get access to that information until the build phase happens. And if the go build pack triggers on any Go file anywhere in the application directory, and your app wasn't actually a Go file, it just your Go app, and you didn't want any kind of Go logic to apply to it, it could trigger when really it was a PHP app that happened to have a Go fixture somewhere deeply embedded in it, right? Sorry, you're muted.
Some other build pack works in conjunction with that, right? So like you can say, hey, I'm all ready as part of the detect phase to contribute Go build, right? But then something else later on has to say, oh yeah, and I know that this is a Go application, and
but it can't do that during detect without the input from the user. That can only come in during build, because the input from the user is coming into the build plan, build pack, and detect happens in parallel, and so it can only get right.
Yeah.
That's
why we communicate very, very limited information across the build plan like that, because there are those limitations.
It's just an interesting more general limitation of using the build plan, build pack approach is that that configuration is suddenly not accessible during detect. That's a kind of.
So like maybe I'm missing something here, but like if I have a source directory that has a build plan in it that says that it has a requirement of Go build, isn't the detect phase of Go build like completely just not important at that point? I've like manually explicitly said, I require Go build, like in the build plan.
Actually,
like, I think you'd worry about like cases where it was like overly expressive, like, oh, it's getting required when it shouldn't. But I think like the fact that you wrote it down in a build plan TOML file indicates to the build packs that like you meant to do this.
Yeah. No, that's totally on point.
It's like the detection phase at that point isn't like an important thing, I don't think.
So you're using just the require to drive the passing, and not it's okay if you don't exit one if you don't see some Go file somewhere.
Yeah, if a user has gotten to the point of like, okay, yeah, no, Ryan, that's a good idea. Because like if a user's gotten to the point where they've written out that they have a requirement for Go build, then it'll run no matter what. Okay.
I think that basically you can have the logic that exists today be like, the build pack can look to see if it can find a target in like the working directory. So if it sees that there's a Go file in the current, like at the root of the working directory, then it like provides and requires itself saying, I think that I'm supposed to run in this scenario. However, in the case that they're like maybe having like some target directory underneath that, and it doesn't find that Go file in the root directory, it just says, I provide myself. Some other build pack may require me, and everything just works, I think. So like, I'm not sure this is a problem. It took me a while to come to that realization during this conversation, but I don't think that we have a problem here.
I keep thinking of build plan as a configuration file when it actually does have a lot of precedence over what actually will run in build plan. So we don't ever have to worry about making detect logic pass if something has been input into the requires field. Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
You would want to do your provide conditional on the thing not being present, or like you'd still be able to look for it during detect, right?
Yeah, it would be like it would provide and require itself if it found a main.go in workspace, right? But if it doesn't find that, it'll still say, all right, well, I provide Go build, and at which point then this will require Go build at whatever, which means that actually then we don't really ever need this execute step either, right? I mean, this might just be something interesting to think about in general, but
I think it's an orthogonal concern at that point.
Definitely. So it'll provide and require itself it okay, cool, finds a splat.go file workspace or whatever, and then this will like be like targets will be added here, and then it'll be some list of or whatever, right?
The targets just point to where the main package is. They don't point to the module root. And so my other question is like, is there a reason where, is it just because you're trying to support apps that aren't Go module apps that, you don't look for those Go mod and Go sum files at the root of the application directory? Or like, do we support multi-module apps right now? Can you push an app where Go mod and sum aren't at the root? It seems like that's very reliable detection criteria for a Go app.
Unless you're using dep.
Then you have Go deps JSON and those files, right?
Yeah, but why would we want to put that kind of detection logic in a generic Go build? And you could also have a situation where you're not using any Go modules at all, right? You're just using standard libraries. I would say that that's probably rare, but it's definitely a situation that we could do.
Makes sense. If the build pack needs to support all of them very generically, then it seems reasonable. I'd almost wonder if it's a rare enough case that you don't have to worry too much about detection, or like you could just require people to specify things more manually when you don't have any configuration file that would lead to be a Go app. I worry about like things where we're searching for .go files and then passing much earlier when another build pack can take it a little bit, but.
I mean, how many situations is there going to be a dot? I mean, you could even change it to main.go, right? Like, I feel like anyone who's intentionally putting a main.go file at the root of their application is most likely has a Go app. And any other configuration that they're doing has to be intentionally sold that they are using Go build.
I don't have a super strong opinion about it. One thing we had talked about before was trying to come up with a way to map environment variables to values inside of the Go, so that you could always use the environment to drive configuration inside of the plan.toml in a consistent way. Did you give up on that? I guess.
I absolutely gave up on that, Stephen. It's so hard. Like, just like even the concept of the idea is really hard, because like I don't know how to write up this. It would have to be like it's fine when you think of like BP underscore go underscore version equals to something, but then like how do I do BP underscore go underscore build underscore flags, and then I have to set this, and then I have to know that this is this type. And
yeah, it seemed like it'd be pretty hard to do. I was just curious if you'd looked into it very much.
Oh no, I gave up on that really quickly after sort of staring at it.
Cool. I definitely like this more than Buildpack YAML. I think it'll be a really consistent way to configure Buildpacks in the future.
I'm excited that it also just clicks together with like any Buildpack, Java, Heroku Buildpacks, anything like that. As long as you know the name of it, you can kind of just call it. All right, I think that's me done. Yeah, sweet.
I guess one last thing is one pattern I've seen some build packs use to kind of keep those build plan items consistent is to try to refer to actual output or like actual artifacts using the names. So like instead of go build, you could say like binary or app binary or something, and that way it kind of drives it as if you're describing the things you want instead of switching between different kind of concepts.
I'm not married to the name go build. It's just what I have here for the proposal.
You could also view it like you're asking for a build, and that's not like a build is kind of a noun there too. So I wasn't sure, just a thought.
It has to be something more specific than something like binary, because that feels like it's kind of a dangerous ask. And then all of a sudden, maybe it's not though, because maybe I can put binary here, and whether or not that binary is, a .NET binary or a whatever binary, like this configuration can change to be whatever, and I can just query for that metadata for that given build. But it should probably be something a little bit more specific.
Go dash compiler dash generated dash link dash object dash code.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. It may make more sense just to say go build there too. It was just a thought.
No, I don't disagree. We have spent a lot of time making these more like, node, npm, node modules, vendor, that sort of thing.
Cool. All right. Anything else, or should we call this one?
I think we're done.
Thanks, everybody.